Well, welcome to another How Conversation on Moral Leadership. I'm Dana Bourne, a Senior Distinguished Fellow with the How Institute for Society, and we are so proud to present today a How Conversation with one of our board members and a friend of the How Institute, Ambassador Jon Huntsman.
Hi, Dana. It's so nice to be with you, and it's a pleasure to be a board member of the How Institute, something that I was not familiar with as an organization, but in terms of the values that it stands for and what it has done in terms of training and education, I'm completely all in.
Serving as the 16th governor of Utah, where you also had approval that was 90%. We call that an A in academics. And a state that was recognized also being the best managed in the nation, as well as #1 in job growth. And also serving abroad 3 times as an ambassador in Singapore, China, and Russia. And then a rare distinction of serving in every presidential administration since Ronald Reagan. So today, serving as vice chair and president of strategic growth at Mastercard, you also bring a publicly traded global company into the conversation to bridge worlds and strengthening partnerships.
Dana, that you could do far better than having me on the show. I'm an imperfect practitioner, and the only reason that I've got a resume that might sound impressive, although it's really not, is because you're around great people who inspire you. And that's what matters most to me. So in turn, you want to make sure that you're inspiring others who are following.
So let's focus on you if we can and get through the servant leader in you as well as the moral leader to learn a little bit more about where this comes from in your journey, just in terms of your upbringing, maybe mentors, somebody that has had an influence on you that actually still lives today. Maybe share with us a little bit of the who and the what that is.
Well, I'd say, Dana, that there are both events and people that kind of shape who you are. You live in interesting times, you experience interesting things, and they happen to have an impact on the choices you make in life. And you're shaped by your environment, but you're very much shaped by the people who intersect with you through life. And I have to say that, I come from a family of educators, entrepreneurs. My grandfather, Huntsman, was a public educator, retired as principal of a high school. My other grandfather ran a hardware store in Palo Alto, California, where I was born. And both were great exemplars of how we do anything means everything. I know they thought through exactly what they were doing as leaders in their day, and this was always top of mind. They wouldn't have known what it was, but they were exemplars in terms of how they conducted themselves and how they let out. My own dad, a great entrepreneur and a terrific father. The mantra I remember most from him growing up was, kill them with kindness. They'll come after you. They'll try to do everything they can to stop you, whether it's in business or public service, but you kill them with kindness because there's not much they can do in response to that. So having those kinds of mentors around for me has always been inspirational. But I've always found, Dana, in whatever work I've done, whether in public or private sector, whether in diplomacy, whether in direct governance of a state, that I've always made it a point to find mentors, people who were doing things way better than me. And that wasn't difficult to do. But I always identified someone who was an exemplar of the values and the moral leadership practices that I always thought were important in successful leaders.
You've operated across a lot of cultures and institutions, and there are moments of probably difficulties or crucibles or tensions where it's often a lot easier to rely on transactional engagement than actually investing in trust. So maybe for our listeners, you could share a little bit of how you approach, what's your playbook for getting beyond this carrot and stick type of transaction towards deeper, more meaningful, humble, trusting relationships that function more as friendships or partnerships, especially when it's really the stakes are very high and trust is maybe not a given.
Yeah, and you hit right on, Dana, a very key word, and that is trust. And without trust, you have nothing, and with trust, you have everything. That should be a guiding principle for any human being, regardless of what the endeavor is. Because if you're in an environment that doesn't speak to trust, and if you don't have that one with another, you won't get anything done. And if you do, it will be just on a temporary transactional basis. And that doesn't serve the purpose or the good of anybody or anything. So I learned I learned in politics, and I'm not much of a politician, but I was in it at one point, and I loved it. That one of the hardest things for me was asking somebody for their vote. And my friends and advisors will come up and say, "Well, you got to aggressively ask people for the vote. You got to do this, or they're not going to vote for you." And it's like, okay, I get that part. But for me, it was I'm asking that person for that which is most precious to them, which is giving you their trust. If they vote for you, they're putting total trust in you as a leader to do something that will improve humanity or improve their conditions. And I used to get up, in town hall meetings and explain this, that I'm an imperfect politician. I'm trying to ask you all for your vote. And that's an important thing to get to the finish line. But let me tell you where I'm coming from when I ask for your vote. For me, that's a daunting thing because I know what it means to you if you want to vote for me. And that is you're giving me your ultimate trust. I never took it for granted, not once. And every time I would go up to somebody and say, I'd like your vote. I hope you vote for me. I want to earn your trust. I guess for a lot of politicians, those are just spoken words, and you learn that in the script or something like that. For me, it was a real kind of deepening of a relationship that I took very, very seriously, maybe too seriously, but I did because I thought there's no more intimate a relationship than that of your constituencies, your colleagues, fellow citizens who vote for you to be governor of a state in which they're placing great trust to fix schools, to pave roads, and to lead with integrity, and to keep your hand out of the cash register, to not do dumb things and not be corrupt.
So what does service first leadership playbook actually look like in practice when you're serving others, that you're unified in that we're about to serve her? And, it's not without cost, personally, professionally, reputationally, but what's the service first playbook look like in practice?
Yeah, I think the service, and again, I'm not an expert at this. I've just been an imperfect practitioner. Um, but I think service, particularly leadership service, um, through whether it's a simple need in your neighborhood or your community, you name it. I've done a lot of different things with my family over the years, and it doesn't matter how simple or how local. You feel empowered. You feel empowered because you're doing something bigger than self. Just serving those who were without shelter over a Christmas break, which I would do with my kids. They all walked away the same way, thinking the same thing. We're doing something bigger than self. And that tends to shape people in ways that they otherwise would not be shaped. So I'm one who believes that service, however defined, whether local, whether in a school, listen, all of our public educators are servants in a very interesting way, or whether it's on a political stage or a public service stage, or whether it's in uniform, as you did so well. Uh, Service, first of all, should be a little hard. It's not the easy road. You're giving of yourself. You're making a contribution to something bigger. And from it, you're improving your community, the well-being of the environment in which people are living. And you are being strengthened as a result of that. It's bringing out a sense of humility. It's bringing out a sense of inclusion and equality.
It's interesting because a virtue of service, I think, is also humility. And so the two go together in terms of being part of something bigger than self, gets you outside of self.
Yeah.
And that humility that comes through from you, there also must be times where you've had, because you're a learner leader, curiosity is something that is a message, right? Even in your mentoring advice for us. what intellectual humility have you had? A short story, maybe, where you held on to a belief or something that, in reflection, you changed that for some reason. What was that where you had a change?
Well, I know so little. It's easy to be an enthusiastic learner. And listen, when you're throwing into an environment when you're on the streets of a developing country in Asia in the late 1970s, and you have to learn a very difficult language, and you've never really studied a language before, and this one is the most complex in the whole world. It brings out enormous humility, like how on earth am I ever going to tackle this one? And if I can't tackle this one, there's no way I can survive because nobody speaks my language. Uh, but it also instills in you a certain work ethic to want to succeed and to pull things mentally and emotionally that otherwise you've never been forced to do, and that helps you along. But I have been so blessed, Dana, in the sense that uh, I've been in so many different environments professionally, whether diplomacy, whether elective politics, whether policy job in DC, running embassies overseas, or in the corporate world. And each of them have been so different that it's like every time that I've had a first day on the job, it's been like I feel like I'm in Taiwan in 1979 all over again, trying to, what am I going to do? I'm going to totally fall through the cracks. There's no way I can master this this language or this subject matter. And it brings out a natural curiosity to want to learn everything you can about the automobile business. I'd not been in the automobile business before I went on the board of Ford and then went in as vice chairman of the company. And now I can tell you how to build a car. And or in the payments world where I am today, which is a highly complicated world of finance. And even though I should have been around retirement age, I came in here and I thought one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm so curious about how this whole side of the global financial circulatory system works and what makes it tick. And I get a front row seat and I get to lead teams and make decisions. I darn well better understand and do my homework and figure out how this stuff works.
There's also this, the only thing certain right now is uncertainty. And so there's that continual learning in this environment as well, whether it's financial, social, global, and it's really rough. And so maybe the question here is how, in your view, what's the most important practice for a moral leader in times of crisis? How do you navigate these chaotic, turbulent times?
Bringing clarity in chaos, which means you filter out the noise from the signal. And few people do that. I'm always surprised. People get caught up in the drama, the noise, and they lose the signal. And the minute you lose the signal, you've got your eye off the ball and you're not able to lead because you have no destination to lead people to. And so for me, chaotic environments, and I've been in some, have taught me that, first of all, deep breath. First of all, you're on point to calm everybody else down. And if you don't calm yourself down, and if you don't model leadership in a chaotic environment, then no one else will. But if you do, they will follow, and they will follow in a like fashion. So if you can lead your team in times of crisis, and anybody can if they put themselves to it on the how side, it's really leading yourself first and foremost. Because if you can't lead yourself during times of crisis and get your act together, then you're never going to be successful at it. But I've actually enjoyed leadership during times of difficulty because I think that's where leaders really can shine. It's where they have the most impact and value. But it's not easy. And you've got to model that behavior in terms of trusting others, in terms of relying on the best information available, in terms of filtering out the noise, in terms of articulating messages of hope and confidence to people who are directly impacted by the chaotic environment.
Yeah, so that stability in the clarity and signaling, so important. You also have reflected, and this is a quote, I think, capital, whether it's monetary or political, is meant to be used to benefit others. And as you well know, Hal frames leadership as stewardship, as you do. How power is used matters as much as whatever is achieved. So the matter matters. And so looking back across the roles that you've had, the decisions that best illustrate power and service of long-term trust rather than short-term wins, what are some of the questions that today's leaders might be asking ourselves to ensure that influence is other-oriented, lifting people up, not just advancing agendas?
So why are you doing what you're doing? What are you in it for? What are the expected outcomes? What is your life journey? What do you value most in terms of what it is you're doing in the service place or in the workplace? And I've always thought very simply that, we come into this world with nothing. We probably should leave with nothing, but that which we give others. And that can be monetary, that can be through service, that can be through inspiration. Doesn't matter. But we don't take anything with us, and therefore it's all kind of what we leave behind. And we're measured by, simple acts of service and kindness. I've never seen a tombstone in a graveyard that didn't have a descriptor of the deceased, that didn't have one or two words. And nobody cares about your bank account. Nobody cares about your titles in life. What comes out, loud and clear is mom or dad or military servant, or made the world better in some form of service. That's what's remembered. And I like to tell my kids, when you read an obituary, that should put your life in perspective, because the first two or three sentences are always the most important in somebody's life. And the first two or three sentences are usually about, depending upon the person and who's writing it, maybe about some historic drama that somebody got involved in. But in most cases, the first couple of sentences are about service and what that person did. And I have two sons in the Navy, and when Jimmy Carter died, who we got a chance to know during his lifetime, in some interesting ways I won't get into right now, I shared his obituary with my two Navy sons, and I said, read what the first few sentences say. Lieutenant JG, United States Navy, nuclear commander, U.S. Naval Academy graduate. And then it was President of the United States down maybe in the second paragraph.
Obituary virtues. That's the dash in our life on our tombstone. It's a beautiful story you just shared. And I know my last question here for our listeners is one that, as positive as you are, it eases and oozes. During these times, we know moral leaders are purveyors of hope. What is giving you hope right now?
Because I see pockets of excellence everywhere I look. I see pockets of despair. I see people suffering. I see divided communities and divided families. But I also see just the opposite. And we tend to focus a lot more on that which is dysfunctional as opposed to that which is functional. And then I travel outside of the United States into marvelous age-old cultures. And I've done this my whole life, pretty much. And I see that the wear and tear that we're experiencing in the United States is not a global phenomenon. We're too negative. We're too quick to judgment. Our politics are divided and upside down. All of that, and you can go on with the laundry list of woes. But you travel to a lot of parts of the United States outside of D.C., because D.C. is kind of a bad town. And you see people working together, just like Alexis de Tocqueville used to write about in the 1830s or 1840s. And that's volunteerism, contributions, people pulling together, to help rebuild a church that burned down, folks coming together to help a mother or a father in need. I mean, this is just routine, and we don't focus on that anymore because it doesn't spin very well in Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is. It's not dramatic enough. But I go to other countries and I see a lot of hope and a lot of young people who are just looking in their eyes. I mean, they're looking at the possibilities with great anticipation. And that's a hopeful sign to me. And my kids still in their eyes have a look of great anticipation. And my dog still has a look of great anticipation every time I walk in the door. So I see this, and it really does warm me.
Well, this has been an amazing how conversation, and I have to say, a way that you captured a time that you engaged with a group of veterans. You used the word inspiring and rejuvenating, and I think our listeners are probably feeling inspired and rejuvenated by your willingness to share your journey. And thank you for the message of how in building trust and also leading across divides. That helps give us hope for our communities and for all levels. And your global influence and impact also is very inspiring and rejuvenating. So we hope it's returned back for you for the journey of your leadership and continual learning. So thank you, Ambassador Jon Huntsman, for sharing with us moral leadership and the how. Let's put more how
Thank you, Dan.
into the world.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure.